Number one offender type is biological fathers, but by far it is being done by middle-aged Caucasian men. Many, over half of them, college graduates. Many of them are educated, good jobs. It's time that we call them out.
White people? Let's talk about it.
Who that is?
Chesley Major. Chesley Major.
Chesley Major.
Not only are we not doing our job as men, it's actually the opposite. Instead of being defenders and protectors of our families, we're hurting and abusing. We're going through a case. The guy that has already been put away and convicted of his crime was abusing. Then we're looking at what he was doing it on, and he was doing it on a Florida Gator blanket. And I was thinking, man, it's probably someone that was rooting for the Gators. Probably someone that maybe is a fan or likes the Gators. No, this, how personal this is. Maybe it's someone that's in the stadium watching us play. Like, this isn't far off or far across around the world. And even sometimes members of Congress will say to us, you know, we got to worry about our backyard. No, we're talking about our backyard. This is our backyard.
Somebody who grew up with a racist, angry father, I am in full agreement with you. There is a very big reason why, if you know me, you know that I don't date white men. It is just not something I do. My own father put a horrible taste in my mouth for white men, and I will never understand my own father. Like, the man who is half of me, the man who created me, was filled with such hate and such rage. And one of the things I don't think I will ever forget is the time my sister was dating a black guy, and he took one of his bullets, he wrote the guy's name on it, he set it on a shelf in our house, and he told her, you make sure if he walks in my front door, he sees that bullet waiting for him. That was my own father. That's the man I grew up with. I mean, until he left and didn't look back because he chose alcohol over his children and wife. But that's a whole nother story. But I agree with you. And there are people who comment and say, oh, you can't lump us all together. You can't do this. You can't do that. I'm basing this on my pure life experience with my own family and what I went through growing up into my young adult life. There is a very big reason I feel the way I do, and a very big reason I am not like my father. So it's one of those things that can go either they're following in the footsteps or they're going the complete opposite. And I'm thankful that I went the opposite way. It's embarrassing how my own dad was, and I can't change it, but at least I can speak up now. And try to help how I can.
How can someone be a white supremacist and not even know it? Easy. Most are. White supremacy isn't just swastikas and burning crosses. It's the belief, conscious or not, that whiteness is the default, the standard, the norm, and most white folks were trained to see it that way from birth, even if no one sat them down and said, being white is better. Think about these issues. If you think of black names as unprofessional, if you get uncomfortable when race is mentioned, if you've said, well, I didn't own slaves, if you think racism is about bad intentions instead of systems, if you see injustice and your first worry is tone, not harm, that's not neutrality. That's how white supremacy survives. But here's the deal. It's not about shame. It's about honesty. If you've inherited a broken system, and we all did, your job is not to feel guilty. Your job is to notice, unlearn, and stop passing it on. So before you say, I'm not one of those white people, ask yourself, am I holding up this system without even realizing it?
We need to have a talk. And this isn't all white people. This is the white people who are giving me a hard time today. So here's what y'all either don't know or forget. I've been watching, observing with eyes wide open, other white people for 51 years. For 34 of those 51 years, I have loved a black man. When that happened, my eyes became even more wide because I realized, even though I had seen it before, but I realized in real time how racist, how biased, how prejudiced most white people are. I'd walk into new spaces and people wouldn't know that they needed to censor themselves yet. So they would just let it fly and they would speak freely and I would be offended. And at the time, when I was young, I didn't know what to do with that. I'd get upset and I'd cry. I'd remove myself from the situation, but I didn't know how to stand up for the situation. And mostly that was because the people that were saying these horrific things were people I thought I liked and trusted. And then I realized I can't like and trust you anymore. So it was hugely disappointing. As I learned and grew, I understood that I have a voice and I can speak up, and you see me on here all the time talking about all kinds of anti-racism work that I do. So, I learned how to deal with that and how to open my mouth and say something. You might remember that at my last job, I was there for over 20 years. So the first few years, I heard some derogatory things, and then people learned who I was and said, ooh, we can't say those things in front of Tracy. So I foolishly thought that maybe the world was changing because people didn't say that stuff around me anymore. I mean, I know realistically, when I think about it, I knew they were censoring themselves, but I guess I just enjoyed being in those spaces where people either truly didn't have terrible views and racial biases, or they knew enough not to say it in front of me. But then fast forward and I start a new job where, I was last year at a new school and it starts all over again. And this time though, because I have my voice, I can say something and I can help educate and I can say, hey, I know, you may not have had bad intent with that comment, but let me tell you what you just said.
I was ignorant of just how bad white supremacy was until I started speaking against it. I thought, of course, racism is real, but I'm sure there's plenty of white people out there who want to fix it. There's plenty of people who want to fix the system so that it's better for everybody. The moment I started calling it out for exactly what it is, that's when things started to shift, and that's when I realized the sheer amount of hatred. And I didn't expect for people that I knew to personally attack me, tell me that I was being too divisive, to lose so many people that I thought were friends of mine. I didn't expect the constant threats of violence or being targeted by neo-Nazis online so badly that they leaked my phone number. I didn't expect to be turned into an internet meme and called Crash Out Kylie and subsequently targeted by white supremacists. I didn't think the journey would be easy, but I do sincerely think that I was blind to just how deeply white supremacy runs. And that is certainly a bias that I have as a white person because I never experienced this hatred until I started speaking against it. The truth is that speaking out against racism as a white person isn't divisive, it's necessary. And despite being doxxed and ostracized from my community, I strongly recommend that other white people do the same. Because why would you want to be friends with somebody who's hell-bent on silencing your voice and the voice of people of color?
Let's talk about our violence. White violence. No more deflecting, no more blaming everything on everybody else. Let's confront ourselves. White people in America, our history is so extremely violent. And instead of confronting that, we continue to blame other people for the issues and the problems in this country, instead of just taking ownership of our part to play in everything, which is a huge part. Can we stop scapegoating other groups of people, please, and just look at ourselves? White people, it's time to talk about it.
A lot of the violent crimes in the white community and coming from the white community either go unchecked, they get overlooked, or labeled as mental health problems, so they get swept up under the rug like they never happened. But as we know, violent crimes in the white community are at an all-time high, coming from the white community as well as inside of the white community. Mass shooting, racist violent brutality, domestic terrorism coming from alt-right, right-wing groups, murder, death, Kill Bill culture, assassinations, all by the hands of the Caucasian white man. And though not all, there's enough to say that this is an epidemic. And instead of taking care of the problem and checking the problem, they spend a great amount of time blaming everything on the black community, deflecting, projecting their problems onto us, instead of checking the problem where it lies, in the white community. Today, you have the younger generation picking up the torch and carrying it farther than the last generation. With the help of the gun, terror, horror, and many unthinkable atrocities have taken place in the United States of America. But this is all by design. Some extremists don't mind dying and don't mind taking one of their own kind. Yes, look, see, racism isn't just about individual prejudice, it's about power. When we examine the history of racism and violence, particularly in the Western societies, it's impossible to ignore the roles that white men have often played in enforcing and upholding systems of racial oppression. The anger, aggression, and oppression have been going on from white men since the beginning of their creation. From European colonialism to American slavery, white men have historically occupied positions of power that allow them to institutionalize racism through laws, policies, and force, such as the Slave Act of 1793 and others like the Slave Act of 1850. In the United States, white male lawmakers created and upheld legal systems that allowed slavery to flourish. After slavery, white supremacist groups like Ku Klux Klan used terrorism and lynchings, acts of horrific violence to maintain racial hierarchy, all while many in power looked the other way. It's important to understand many white men were complicit in or actively perpetrated racism and violence. We're talking about systematic power, not individuals. Racism persists when systems built by and for the benefit of one group remain unchallenged. White men having historically occupied leadership roles in government, business, and law enforcement were often able to shape these systems to their advantage, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes intentionally. These systems continue to create unequal outcomes in policing, education, housing, healthcare, and more. Today, acts of racial violence, including hate crimes, mass shootings with racist motives, and police brutality still disproportionately involve white male perpetrators targeting communities of color. We've seen this in Charleston, El Paso, Buffalo, and many other places. These acts often fueled by white supremacist ideologies, which falsely claim that people of color threaten the social or cultural dominance of white people. And now, in 2025, present day America, they're carrying out more unimaginable, horrific, terrible crimes. Understanding the role that white men have historically played in racism and violence isn't about guilt, it's about responsibility. Recognizing the truth allows us to challenge and change the system that perpetuates inequality. The fight against racism is about justice, truth, and building a future where power and opportunity aren't determined by race. Racism and violence have deep roots, but so does resistance. If we want a more just and equal society, we need to understand history honestly and confront uncomfortable truths. At the end of the day, these violent individuals are not representatives of all white men, but their actions do reflect how extremist views can grow in environments where racial resentment goes unaddressed. Leave a comment. Click the like button. It makes a difference. Subscribe at the bell. Thanks for all that you do. See you on the next one. Peace.
You know business, born insecure, junkyard mother.